Iris J here with Madrona's Pulse Teachings, Astrology for Healing. I hope this finds you doing well. I am, if you follow my channel regularly, not in my usual place, as you can tell with this backdrop. I find myself in transit in a hotel for a little while, and I was working with these energies of the new moon, so I thought I'd just make the video for you here, and that way I can get it out and you can have some time to feel into the energies as they are coming upon us. We are talking about the new moon that's happening on December 12th, Sagittarius new moon. Where I am on the West Coast, it's happening at 3:32 p.m. And we're always with a new moon. We have the sun and the moon together in that sign. So they're together in Sagittarius. And always with a new moon, we are talking in the smaller cycle about setting intentions for new beginnings. That's Finnegan. There's another dog here too. We're in a small room. They're probably going to say hi. Also, if you're on my channel regularly, you know that I live with animals and they like to say hi. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm Iris. I live with a lot of animals. They usually say hi. Please do subscribe if it's your first time. It really helps our smaller channels get out and do our thing. And I'm gonna get back into the new moon now. So it's usually traditionally a time in that smaller cycle of the lunation cycles when we are setting intentions, coming into new beginnings within ourselves. And we're coming out of that Gemini full moon. I know for myself and for a lot of folks, that full moon was a lot. There's a lot going on. So we're coming out of whatever kind of came into illumination. And hopefully we are integrating in a way that those illuminations within ourselves, within our lives, within our psyches, are supporting us to enter into this Sagittarius energy of new beginnings. So let's just talk about Sagittarius energy. Sagittarius, we are in a fire sign. We are in an adventurous spirit, new beginnings that are really, and again, we're still coming out of a very intense eclipse season. And so we're still, coming into this solstice threshold now. And this is also when solstice is a threshold when there is new beginnings. And here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're coming into that period of darkness when we kind of traditionally go within. In the Southern Hemisphere, you're coming into summer. And yet, I have a solstice video, I'll link it down below, because the solstice threshold this year, which is on the 21st of December, is really inviting us actually into quite of an introspective space as we enter into the new season. And I promise I will connect this to our Sagittarius energy. And so we're coming into that kind of introspective place, and yet what's lending us into that and sending us into that is the Sagittarius new moon, which is energy of new beginnings in this adventurous spirit of learning, of understanding, of coming into potentially a whole new understanding of our own place within the world. Sagittarius is big meaning structures. What is astrology all about? What is healing all about? What is psychology all about? What is religion or politics or math? What are these disciplines that we've constructed as big ways of understanding the world all about? And so with a Sagittarius new moon coming within this kind of these interlaying cycles of energies, we might be inspired to learn something or try something that could be quite new for us. And we could be imagining teaching something at some point, or we could just have a feeling of inspired fire burning within us, and we might not know exactly what it is, but there's something that wants to come into fruition. And we have the freedom. Sagittarius is also about freedom to think and explore and be excited about that. And so this is some of the new moon energy that we can really work with, and that can carry us into, as we go through that solstice threshold and as we come into Mercury retrograde, which I will talk about, we can kind of go into that inner reflective place as we are learning new things about ourselves and about how we're situated in this complex world. And let's talk about some of the aspects. So firstly, this new moon is squaring Neptune, okay? So we've got Neptune, who has recently gone direct in Pisces, right just before the 25th degree of Pisces, and Neptune went direct on December 6th. So this is significant because Neptune going direct, yes, it's an outer planet, but it's a very big impact for us, especially if we have certain placements or certain strong energies in our charts. And Neptune is everything that is beyond how we have developed day-to-day society, the social structures, the meaning structures that we've created in society, how we think society should run, the idea of a 9-to-5 world, work world, for instance, that doesn't align with so many of us. And Neptune is everything beyond that. It is the spiritual, the mystical, it is dreamscapes, it is the ocean, it is the collective unconscious, it is the dissolving of this ego, this woman idea of Iris that I am, and just being in the flow of all that is. And that energy is squaring in a new cycle of going direct with that energy, of bringing the spiritual into our lives, of understanding what is traditionally quite challenging for these cognitively driven minds of ours, of understanding it in new ways. That's squaring this new beginning of Sagittarius energy. And for that square to be productive, you know, if you just look up a square online, or if you only work with certain types of astrology, you're just going to see the square described as challenging. It can be. I personally don't work with that word. I work with dynamic, especially like in a natal chart. Squares are where the juicy bits of life come from. And it takes a while to learn to work with that energy. And so when we have them showing up in an aspect, the energy wants to be quite productive when we're allowing it to do what it wants to do. So as we're beginning these new ventures in these Sagittarian realms of our psyches, of our lives, of our imagination is a big piece of Sagittarius energy. It wants to be lending itself to those Neptunian ways, to the spiritual coming into our own lives, potentially in the gifts that we want to bring into this world and the things that we want to study. This is absolutely, Neptune coming in is not just learning a trade simply so that I can go and be a worker bee and accumulate capital and climb a social ladder. Neptune has issues with that whole structure of meaning making. And so Neptune is wanting to come in, and it's wanting to be an influencing energy that supports these new beginnings in a way that is also about aligning ourselves with our higher selves, because that's also part of Neptune energy, what our soul is here for, and also ultimately aligning our own journeys with these big words like compassion and unconditional love and forgiveness. These are full-on Neptunian realms, and in this way there could be a growth. There could be a growth of our evolutionary consciousness when we are allowing ourselves to follow this kind of, sometimes I call it an aesthetic rhythm or an aesthetic impulse, and Neptune works with the arts and mediums, and it's this feeling, this pulse that we allow ourselves to follow in to this new stage, this next stage of our lives, whether that is big or that's simply carrying us into 2024. But what can we invite that brings the spiritual, that brings the Sagittarius adventuring, learning spirit into our lives a little bit more, and most likely in a way that is new? And there's another aspect going on as well, which is that the new moon is in what we call a quincunx with Uranus, who is retrograde in Taurus. So a quincunx is an aspect that isn't talked about as much. It is still an important aspect, especially when it's exact. And one of the descriptions I like of a quincunx is that because of how the because of the angles that we're working with of this energy. It's like having two roommates that don't do things the same way and don't live the same way, but they have to learn how to cohabitate together. And so it takes mindful attention and energy, except those two roommates, they are within our psyche, especially if you have quincunx in your natal chart. And so we've got this Uranus energy that's retrograde in Taurus, which wherever we have Taurus in our chart, this is energy we've been working with for a while, but it is ultimately kind of turning up the soil of our psyche, of our life, of our body, as we're developing new values, developing new relationships with sustainability and earth consciousness. Sustainability, yes, in terms of environmentalism in our lives, our own individual lives, but also in terms of emotional and embodied sustainability, which, especially when we look at indigenous wisdoms, is also aligned with environmental sustainability as well. But that psychological, emotional sustainability, which is rooted in the body and how we nourish ourselves and the types of lives that we live and how we value. Wherever we have Taurus, Uranus is doing work there, and right now it's in that retrograde reflection cycle. And that is in a quincunx to this Sagittarius, new beginning, expanding, exploring, fire energy. And so a quincunx can feel a little uncomfortable. And so on the one hand, we have this Neptunian energy that is wanting to spiritualize, that is wanting to bring higher self intuition in, that is wanting to bring just kind of a fire and almost impulsive intuition about what we need to learn, what we need to pursue in terms of meaning making, and something in the body that could feel a little uncomfortable. And so what we want to do, especially if you're feeling that discomfort or you're feeling any disjoint, is really tuning in to how can I support myself? How can what I want to study also work into supporting my body, supporting my emotional, mental health, which is situated within my body? How can it support my lifestyle? How can it support my values? And so bringing a little bit of that practical energy, which Sagittarius doesn't always have, because it can get so excited in those imaginal realms, and oh my goodness, do we need that excitement in those imaginal realms. And this new moon wants us to go there in a Neptunian way, which is just taking us out of everyday spheres. And Taurus is actually, the Uranus quincunx is bringing a little bit of radical sustainability into those dreamings. So we want to work mindfully with that. And one other big aspect that I want to be sure to bring into here is that I wrote down the exact hours. About 8 hours after this new moon, Mercury goes retrograde. So by the time we're in this new moon, actually Mercury is like just about to go retrograde. And so this is really interesting because on the one hand, we have this Sagittarius energy, and Sagittarius wants to move, it wants to expand, it wants joy, it wants abundance. And we're coming into it as that Mercury in Capricorn is going retrograde. Mercury in Capricorn actually being a very practical energy that can support us in making plans, and yet it's going retrograde, which I think is actually quite lovely when we work with this new moon Sagittarius energy as really supporting us going after what we want to learn about, what we dream about knowing, inviting those realms that some of us don't even get taught. It's okay to learn new things and adventure inside our minds and through the relationship that is learning. And Mercury going retrograde signals, yeah, do it and come into a time of not having to know how it's going to work out. Come into a time of not having to know how it's necessarily going to pay the bills. That will come later. Let's let that come in 2024. Now let's just be excited about coming into this new phase of allowing ourselves to learn for the sake of enjoyment and not necessarily have it all figured out. There is the Uranus in Taurus. There is Mercury in the beginning in Capricorn. It is actually going to go retrograde and go back into Sagittarius. And so there is some of that call for practical, but Uranus is retrograde too. So just letting it be there in the background, letting it be kind of like that hum that we notice. If we're kind of doing a mindfulness meditation, we notice the sound, but it just becomes part of the meditation. Let that kind of questioning, okay, how is this going to support this, or how is this, let that just be in the background, and focus on the joy, focus on the excitement. And also, sorry folks, there's a lot with this one. I also just want to mention that this new moon is trining the North Node. Okay, so we've got the North Node in Aries, which also means it's trining Chiron. It's not as close with Chiron, but it's certainly in an orb there, and it's feeling it. And so this just adds another layer, that trine to the North Node. If we are allowing ourselves to pursue what that Neptunian call, even if it's just felt as intuition, or even if it comes through dreams, or it comes through deep meditation, or it comes through expressive journaling or image making, all of that's to say we don't need to like cognitively understand the plan. Neptune does not work like that. And so, but if we're allowing that to come in, and we're allowing that to infuse itself in this kind of Sagittarius, adventurous imagination, learning new things, imagining new ways of being in this world, even this energy is also trining that North Node in Aries, which is all about us coming into our sacred self. Aries is about us. It is about our drive, our needs, our desires. When we are working with the elevated Aries, who is in tune with the cosmic rhythms, this is not all those stereotypes of selfish Aries. This is how we need to be in order to nourish the daring part of our human spirit that we come here to have. It is also part of being a leader, whatever that word means to us, even if we just lead by the way that we live our lives, by following our integrity and our sense of self, and allowing those Neptunian Sagittarius realms to start unfolding. That energy is here, and it is trining the North Node, helping us come into destiny. That's a word for the North Node that a lot of us like. I like that word because it's part of the paradigm of especially the transiting North Node. And then it's also trining that Chiron, who very interestingly is also retrograde and going to station direct right at the end of December. So Chiron is also ending a phase, and so it's kind of in that very slow movement, and then it's going to go direct just in a few weeks after this new moon with our next full moon. And that can kind of be a very lovely way of planting those seeds, that healing sense of self. On the one hand, we have the North Node, who is wanting to expand and calling forth our sacred self in Aries. And we all have Chiron transiting through Aries, which is healing that sacred self, which is healing that part of ourself that hasn't been taught to trust our needs, that has our basic needs, that hasn't been taught that it's okay to listen to our instincts, to follow our desires and our spirit in a way that is aligned with spirit, that higher truth, goddess, universe, whatever language we use. That's part of the Aries archetype. And so there's something that's also healing there. And when all of these layers come in, they're Chiron kind of turning and about to move forward as we journey on with that healing journey. And so this energy of this new moon is helping to support that. And our divine feminine energy is here too, folks. It's all here. We've also got Vesta, who is retrograde, and she's going to be really significant during the solstice. She's going to be exactly opposite the sun. She's trining Saturn in Pisces, which is also just really supporting the Pisces realms of us moving forward, closing out psyches in those Pisces, closing out cycles in those Pisces realms. Also the energy that Neptune is in, but in the opposite end of the sign. Vesta is retrograde, and she's at the first degree of Cancer. She's about to go back into Gemini. And so there's this potentially just this divine inner hearth, fire, creative, sacred sexuality energy that's just wanting to support us as we welcome in this potential spiritual healing is another layer kind of floating in there. And then we've also got Venus exactly conjunct Pallas, right in Scorpio. So we've got this really lovely divine feminine creative wisdom, our values going deep into our intimate places, and their opposite Jupiter, who's helping to really helping to heal those places with Venus and Pallas as we come into ways that they support us in our expansive ways, which brings us right back into our Sagittarius new moon, because Jupiter is the ruler of that Sagittarius new moon. So the fact that Jupiter is also opposite and having a dialogue with Venus and Pallas is just the supportive divine feminine energy. And also it's in Scorpio, so this is like deeply rooted divine feminine energy that doesn't take BS. So we can kind of lean into that no BS divine feminine energy there, supporting us to expand into these Sagittarian realms that this new moon is calling us forth into. And I am going to leave it at that. I am sending new moon blessings out to you, and be well.